The motion for today is this house believes that video games could be detrimental to children. Acting as the government team for this debate is the team from Langkawi, with Miss Sophia Catherine Ringvold as the first speaker, Mr. Lai Zhengyi as the second speaker, Miss Soraya Caroline Ringvold as the third speaker, and the reply speech will be delivered by Mr. Lai Zhengyi. While acting as the opposition team for this debate is the team from KMY, with Mr. Alif Ahmad Razi as the first speaker, Miss Amber Lee Jia Chun as the second speaker, Mr. Yuga Varga Anak Lelaki S. Sanggaran as the third speaker, and the reply speech will be delivered by Miss Amber Lee Jia Chun. There are 3 adjudicators who will adjudicate this competition. They are Mrs. Balkish binti Muhammad Rashid as the Chief Judge, and she will be assisted by Mrs. Nur Faizura binti Sahul Hamid, and last but not the least, Mrs. Tan Shi Min. Now, I would like to read out some of the rules of this debate. For the substantive speech, each debater is given 8 minutes to deliver his or her speech. The timekeeper will ring the bell once after the first minute to show that points of information (POI) can be delivered. The timekeeper will then ring the bell once again at the end of the 7 minutes to show that the time for POI is over. At the end of the 8 minutes, the bell will be rung twice to indicate that the time allocated is over. A maximum time of 3 minutes will be given to both teams to prepare for the reply speech. The timekeeper will ring the bell once to show the start of the preparation time, and the bell will be rung twice after 3 minutes to show that the time to prepare for the reply speech has ended. For reply speech, the timekeeper will ring the bell once at the 3rd minute to signal that the debater has 1 minute left. At the end of the 4th minute, the bell will be rung twice to signal the end of the debate. We shall begin our debate today. To open the case from the government team, please welcome the first speaker of the government team, Ms. Sophia Catherine Ringvold.
What is a video game? What's the world's first video game? Who invented the game? I believe that is the question that everyone in this debate must have at some point in their life pondered these questions. Stay calm as I am taking all of you for a brief information tour. Many people believe that Pong was the first game created. However, in 1958, a physicist by the name of William Higginbotham created a simple tennis game that is similar to the 1970s game. Since then, the video games have evolved to be different, most of them including subjects that cause absolutely calamitous effects to people, especially children. Today, what we, the government, are supporting is video games could be detrimental to children. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to the adjudicators, the timekeeper, my brilliant fellow ministers, the respected opposition team, and especially everyone in between. I, the Prime Minister, will be highlighting a number of fundamental points in my speech, which are as follows: to illustrate the terrifying effects of sleep deprivation caused by video games, addiction, and stereotypes. My second minister will be talking about how the attention span of children is getting awfully short because of video games and the cynical and violent subjects that are included in these video games. The third minister will wrap up our case nicely with a figurative bow on the top and further clarify why the opposition's arguments are completely and utterly inaccurate. Before starting with my case, I'll first have to give the definition of the word video games, detrimental, and children. The, the definition of video games, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a game played electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a monitor or a display. On the other hand, detrimental means tending to cause harm. And lastly, children means a young human being below the age of puberty or below the legal age of majority. So first, in order to play video games, you're going to need a phone, a computer, or any device with a screen. Every LED screen uses LEDs. Every screen uses LED screens that have high blue light content, which can disrupt our biological rhythms when viewed in the evening or night. This can cause delayed sleep onset, and visible blue light may also potentially be harmful to the human retina, as it can be absorbed by the retinal pigment epithelium, RPE, and certain photoreceptors, generating localized oxidative and thermal stress. Laboratory studies on rodent and primate models have demonstrated that extended periods of time of direct retinal exposure to bright blue light content accelerates rates of RPE and photoreceptor death. What does this have to do with children? Children, especially nowadays, always have their faces glued to the screens. They need constant distraction.
POI, man.
Video games help. No, thank you. With and video games help with that. It is no surprise that they actually don't. Although the light emitted by personal electronic devices is not bright enough to damage the human retina, it is, however, able to simulate blue light sensitive ganglion cells, photoreceptors that regulate circadian rhythms. As a result, cellular telephones, tablets, and personal computers used before bedtime can delay sleep onset, degrade sleep quality, and impair alertness the following day.
POI, man.
Yes?
Isn't it obvious here that when and where you use it is detrimental instead of video games in itself being detrimental? You have agreed to that, actually.
Yes, but children, like I said, are always constantly glued to their screens, and video games do not help with that. They really want distractions when it comes to video games. Extended use of these devices has also been shown to cause symptoms of dry eyes, blurred vision, and headaches. Children need about 10 to 11 hours of sleep, and well, video games are doing the exact opposite. To list some of the effects included are sleep deprivation, lack of attention span, mentally and physically tired, and more. One study published in the Journal of Pediatrics found that children who played video games spent less time in deep, restorative, slow-wave deep sleep. At the same
POI,
time,
ma'am.
no. At the same time, their sleep onset latency, the time it took for them to fall asleep, is increased. By contrast, just watching TV without interacting doesn't affect sleep patterns. However, this study demonstrates that gaming before bed, especially excessive gaming, can moderately decrease sleep quality by lengthening the time it takes to fall asleep, decreasing time spent asleep, and reducing the amount of deep stage sleep. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. That is a quote by Carl Gustav Jung. My next point, addiction, and in this case, gaming addiction, is quite common, primarily in youth nowadays. especially in video games such as Valorant, Minecraft, and Call of Duty. Gambling addiction is when you have an addiction towards gambling. Whether one knows
POI,
you're
ma'am.
going to lose, no. Whether one knows you're going to lose in a game of poker and lose an exorbitant amount of money, but combine the two and you get what's commonly known as gacha games, deriving deriving from the Japanese word gachapon. And a great example of the combination of these addictions is a video game that's been steadily rising, Genshin Impact. Since the launch, many people have tried out the game only for them to be hooked, addicted, and simply can't get enough of it. And people, as of now, are spending real life money on this game just to buy what are these items that are completely useless instead of buying real necessities. My last final point
POI,
is the
ma'am.
gender stereotypes. No, thank you. It's about the gender stereotypes in video games. Research, research that has been made by several professors from France and the USA indicated that many video games are saturated with stereotypes of women that is content cultivated in sexism. In video games, over 80% of female characters are portrayed according to these three types: sexualized, scantily clad, or vision of beauty. And over a quarter fit all three of these stereotypes. While it appears that women are generally underrepresented in video games, they are frequently presented as attractive beings, sex objects, and in sexually suggestive ways. One of the first extensive content analysis of top-selling video games showed that in over a quarter of these games, women were depicted as a sex object. The more time spent playing video games that have a high percentage of sexist and misogynistic portrayals of females predict higher sexist attitudes. Children are vulnerable, and they would probably be very,
So I
very no. They are unquestionably certain that this is what they want in women. So, in conclusion, we, the government, truly believe in the motion that is give video games are detrimental to children. That is all. Thank you. Oh, I already said that is all. That's 7:46.
then, to start the case from the opposition team, please welcome the first speaker of the opposition team, Mr. Alif Ahmad Razi.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to the adjudicators, honorable judges, accurate timekeepers, the government team, and members of the House. We have heard our top motion for today's debate. However, allow me to repeat the motion one more time. This House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. As for the definition of the motion, we, the opposition team, agree with the definition put forth by the government team. With that in mind, the roles of the opposition team is simple. I, as the first speaker, will be rebutting the points made by the government team and present one point of my own, and our second speaker will rebut some of the points made by the government team and present two of our own points to further support our case today. Our third speaker will rebut all the arguments made by the government team and affirm why our arguments should be accepted. Now, I would like to bring to the attention of the members of the House that the Prime Minister from the government team did not bring up a case line. Therefore, this further proves that the fact that today's motion should not stand. Now, our team stand is video games are not detrimental in nature. It's only its level of use makes it so. Before I begin, before I begin my points, I would like to rebut the points made by the Prime Minister of the government team. A bad woodsman always blames his tools. The Prime Minister stated that video game exposes children to blue light, which can ruin their eyes. However, during the pandemic, teachers uses online classrooms for hours to teach children, which also exposes children to blue light. So is the government implying that online classrooms are detrimental to children? I don't think so. Moving on, the Prime Minister also stated that players often spend money on games for useless items. This is not the video game's fault, but rather the user's fault, because it is the user's choice to spend money on the game. How can we put you? The Prime Minister is simply trying to redirect the blame onto video games. Now, without further ado, allow me to present my first point, which is video game improves cognitive skills. Cognitive skills are the core skills your brain uses to read, think, remember, learn, reason, and pay attention. Needless to say, cognitive skills are extremely important as they allow us to think rationally and creatively. One of the cognitive skills that can be improved through video games is analysis. Analysis includes detecting patterns, brainstorming, observing, interpreting data, integrating new information, theorizing, and making decisions based on multiple factors and options available. All of these are stimulated in video games. Constant stimulation and usage of this skill will undoubtedly enhance it, especially since children learn quicker due to their still developing brain. I would like to bring up a research done by scientists from Queen Mary University of London and University College London. And the results revealed that children who played a strategy game called StarCraft were much more accurate and faster in performing tasks involving cognitive skills such as decision making and analysis. This is undeniable proof that video games can improve cognitive skills. Having an enhanced set of cognitive skills will allow an individual to solve a problem more quickly and creatively, learn new things more quickly, and not feel overwhelmed when facing new challenges. This is especially important for children since they are always learning new things and facing new challenges in their life. Moving on. Another skill, cognitive skill that can be improved through video game is problem solving. Problem solving helps us determine why an issue is happening and how to resolve said issue. It's one of the key skills that is required in the academic life of children. Problem solving starts with identifying the issue, coming up with a solution, implementing those solutions, and evaluating the effectiveness of said solutions. Video games always challenges the player by giving them problems and have them figure out the solutions to set problems. These problems may vary in difficulty and uniqueness. Yes, please.
It only helps them when it comes to video games. It's not going to be effective in the real world.
When video games improve cognitive skills, that cognitive skills will allow them to apply it in real life. When they learn how to solve a problem in game, it will teach them the process how to solve a problem, finding the solution, implementing the solution, and evaluating the effectiveness of that solution. These are all the skills that can be applied in real life. Moving on. Video games always challenges the player by giving them problems and have them figuring out the solutions to set problems. These problems may vary in difficulty and uniqueness. Whether they are facing a horde of enemies or solving a complex puzzle, players are always learning and improving their problem-solving skills through video games. A study done by the American Psychological Association stated that playing video games help children develop problem-solving skills, and that the more children play strategic video games, such as Tetris, the more they improve in their problem-solving skills and their school grades the following year. Last but not least, another cognitive skill that can be improved through video game is creativity. Creative thinking is essential for children to develop as it can help them be more successful later in life. We don't know what technology or job industries lay ahead for our young learners, but you can set them up for success by having them become a creative thinker. Most video games requires players to be creative to a certain degree. For example, when they create a character, when they come up with stories, or even creating their own strategies to win their games. This, in turn, will help them boost their creativity as they are juicing out their ideas to produce an outcome that they desire. A game that is well known for boosting the development of creativity is Minecraft, a game where players have access to a huge amount of resources and thus allowing them to build unique and creative structures. Furthermore, a study by Iowa State University showed that 866 out of 1,000 children who play of 12 years old who play video games do get more creative in tasks such as writing, stories, and drawing compared to children who do not play video games. In conclusion, video games are not only a form of entertainment, but also a new and exciting way for children to learn and develop their cognitive skills, which are important for their future. With that being said, I would like to reiterate that our team stand is that video games are not detrimental in nature. Only the level of use makes it detrimental. I will once again state that we as the opposition team strongly oppose the motion this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. Thank you for lending me your ears.
Alright, dear debaters, due to some technical settings, you might hear the bell maybe rung twice for 7 minutes and 4 times for the 8 minutes. So it should be once for 7 minutes, twice for 8 minutes. To continue our debate today, I would like to invite the second speaker of the government team, Mr. Lai Zengyi.
Hello and a very good morning to all. On this very fine morning, I will be a second minister. Before I reinforce and solidify the fact that video games are detrimental to children, I will first rebut your points and explain why you are wrong, absolutely wrong. Firstly, you say that video games improve cognitive skills. You say that children get better at analyzing and decision making. However, instead of using video games, how about they use other alternatives? Think about it. If they use other alternatives, such as books, to learn, they won't have to face the disadvantages and the harm of video games. As my first prime minister has said, video games cause addiction. Addiction is a serious problem. Some people, like drug addicts, are over addicted to drugs. Even if they have good decision making, drugs will overpower them and they won't be able to make good decision making. That's why I counter your first point on why video games improve cognitive skills. Secondly, you say that video games improves problem solving. Think about it. If video games are that good, why don't teachers use video games in school?
Here I, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Sir, for your information, your government has invented video games in your learning process. In Google Classroom, there are video games for you to learn from. So are you contradicting your own government's policy?
I agree with you. There are many games that are actually educational. However, do you think children would enjoy playing these types of games? Highly doubt it. Okay, back to my point. You would think that video games improve problem-solving skill. However, like I mentioned, only educational games improve problem-solving skills. Many games that children enjoy playing are actually useless. And thirdly, you mentioned that by playing video games, creativity will be improved. Actually, creativity isn't improved by playing video games. Some people don't even need video games to become a more creative person. Some kids and children enjoy painting. Do they need to use video games to paint? No, absolutely not. However, they are getting more creative by painting. So, video games are not necessary to improve creativity. Now, I will get into why video games are detrimental to children. First and foremost, video games kill attention span. Researchers interpreted the findings to suggest that video game playing can compound kids' existing attention problems. Though the study doesn't offer supporting evidence that games cause or worsen the attention problems, they did find that kids who play more video games have more severe ADHD symptoms. Another study by Jacob W. Brower examined the effects of brief exposure to violent video game on a test of attention and concentration in 12 to 14-year-old males with low volume video game play histories. Think about it. These are just 12 to 14-year-old males. What would happen if they were children? They hypothesized that subjects who played 45 minutes of violent video game would perform significantly worse on a widely used neuropsychological test when compared to their baseline performance. Participants were given two versions of digit span forward DSF, a neuropsychological test that measures attention and concentration. Each subject was tested with DSF version 1 at baseline and then again with DSF version 2, immediately following 45 minutes of playing a violent video game. The results revealed that subjects performed significantly worse after brief exposure to violent video game. Previous studies have linked video game playing for extended and intermediate periods of time to attention problems with both high volume and low volume players. This study demonstrates that brief exposure to violent video games may also have negative effect on attention and concentration. To conclude this point, video games does indeed kill attention span. Secondly, if children don't stop playing video games, they will definitely learn negative things. Nowadays, playing video games has become a popular activity for people of all ages, especially children. Children often spend most of their time every day playing video games. While a little amount of games may have educational content,
KMY.
yes,
So you're actually also agreeing to us saying that video games are not detrimental on its nature, but it depends on the level of usage. It depends if the users are using it addictively or overindulge or over-reliance. It depends on that. So why are you blaming video games on that? Please justify
Yes.
your answer.
yes, you have a point. However, I don't necessarily totally disagree with you. Most things are caused by us, right? That's correct. However, video games will influence how we think, how we feel, and what we do, as I'll mention later. And nothing matters after we are influenced negatively by playing video games. Children often spend their time playing video games. While a little amount of games may have educational content, like I mentioned previously, many of the most popular games emphasize negative themes and thus make these types of games more interesting. That's why children don't play educational video games.
POI, sir.
No, thank you. They promote the killings in warlike scenarios, sometimes criminal behavior, disrespect for the law and other authority figures, sexual exploitation or violence towards women, racial, sexual, and gender stereotypes, and foul language and obscene gestures. They also promote negative themes such as the killing of people or animals, or violence in short. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of the following games before: PUBG, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and many more. There's growing research on the effects of video games on children. Studies of children exposed to violence have shown that they can become immune or numb to violence, imitate the violence they see, and show more aggressive behavior with greater exposure to violence. Studies have also shown that the more realistic and repeated the exposure to violence, the greater the impact on children. That these type of violent video games will cause children with no other risk factors for violence turn into someone who's extremely violent and harms others. A study led by Professor Douglas Gentile and Associate Professor of Psychology at Iowa State University showed that kids who play violent video games learn to think in aggressive ways that can eventually influence their behavior. Dr. Gentile says kids are changing ways they think that can eventually influence their behavior. So, before I end, in conclusion, not only is it detrimental to children, but also the reason why some children are morally corrupt. Thank you.
The debate will continue with a speech from the second speaker of the opposition team. Please welcome Ms. Amber Lee Jia Chun.
Moderation is key. Thank you, Speaker of the House. A very good morning to everyone. So allow me to restate today's motion, which is this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. And our team stand, we as the opposition team, thinks that it isn't detrimental in nature, but the level of use which makes it so. Before I continue with my points, allow me to dive into the arguments given by the Prime Minister of the government team, and also the second speaker of the government team. I would like to bring to the attention span of the members of the House and ladies and gentlemen and Speaker of the House. First of all, the government has failed to bring out their case line. They have no case line, which means they have no stand. They have no center, which is one of the major stands the government should provide. They have failed to put forward a case line, which is why today's motion should not stand at all. Secondly, they are just generalizing things and just talking about, oh, this is bad, this is the detrimental impacts on children. But then we say that it's not because of video games, it's the level of use which makes it so, which they have again and again agreed to us. Because this is how the users use them. How, depending on how the users use them, is detrimental. But then it's not because of the nature of it. You're saying, okay, let me say about the second thing is that when they're supposed to give only 1 point from the first speaker and 2 points from the second speaker. However, they in total have given 5 points. So this is also against the government format. As the first speaker has said, sleep deprivation. Again, we are saying that video games itself does not lead to sleep deprivation. It's because of the level of usage. It's because of the user's fault that got addicted to it, leading to him don't want to sleep and leading to all him those neglecting their daily requirements. It's not the video games that are detrimental in nature. Rejected first. Second point, addiction. Again, the motion today does not say that video games could be detrimental to children if they are addicted. We are saying that video games could be detrimental to children in general, which is totally irrelevant because we did not mention the excessive use. The motion itself does not mention excessive use. Secondly, medical health issues, eyesight. So you're saying that by exposing video games to children, it will worsen their eyesight. So are you trying to say, are you trying to encourage that whatever that is shown or portrayed through a screen, we should stop it, even watching a movie or a presentation in school? So you're also agreeing to us that you're saying if used excessively, it will be detrimental, but if it's used moderately, it's okay. So that is agreeing to us, saying that it depends on the level of use.
BOI.
Yes.
Actually, video games nowadays are now trying to be built to be as brightly colored as possible. And since children are now more attracted to bright colors and flashing lights, then that means that they are now attracted to things that could actually harm their eyesight.
Okay, you can say that, but then video games, you cannot blame video games for being attractive because this is what the game developers want. They want to make profit. So you cannot blame that for video games, but you should blame on the users for being addicted to it and then neglecting all those daily requirements. That is why we say that the level of use makes it so. You're also saying about sex toys and about women, but you forgot about the age restrictions. Shouldn't that be the fault of the users? Actually, they should not play that in the first place. This is where parents should come in as well, because the exposure is not detrimental if it's played controllably. So following to my point, which is video games help with socializing aspects if used moderately. This is because video games create more opportunities to socialize. How? First of all, video games give them access to a global community regardless of location and time zone, and learn from people with different ideas and perspectives. In real time, children are not given lots of opportunities to experience different situations. That is the reality of it. But in video games, children can be placed anywhere in the world, in any scene they want to be, plus having to work with new people every round of their games. The option to work together and form alliances is essential for future collaboration in work, where they would have to deal with diverse people with different backgrounds and opinions. Although it's interaction through a screen, the government cannot deny that it's also a way for children to take the first step to socializing with others. Matthew Barr, who studies video games and gamer culture at the University of Glasgow in Scotland, had a study that shows after 2 months of playing video games, communicative skills in children improved by 70%. Thus, the stereotype that children could get isolated or be introverted through video games, like the government has mentioned, is not entirely true, as communicating comes in many forms, even writing and networking through text or verbally. So video games also gives them the opportunities to socialize. The soft skills they learn in socializing is crucial. Yes, they can be learned in the classroom. Yes, they can be learned in anywhere else. But the question is, how many times can this be done? How many times can this be done with their family or friends, where video games can let them allow them to socialize anywhere and anytime? There are always pros and cons to everything. As I said, according to our team stand, if used moderately, video games are absolutely capable of helping them socialize and expand their horizons. Now, moving on to my third point, which is video games are a proven effective educational tool for children. We are living in a technology revolutionized world, ladies and gentlemen. Most of the things that we have are controlled by technology. That goes without saying. Games we play are also digitalized. In terms of formal education, globally, there are trends of foreign education institutions using computer games as a learning method. So according to What EL 2005, games can offer many opportunities for pupils to learn both the knowledge of science and its associated vocabulary in an interesting way. Locally in Malaysia as well, the government itself, the Ministry of Education itself, had and still are implementing educational video games in classrooms. Your government side, our Ministry of Education, knows that computer simulation is driving the changes in education, because digital technology like video games is transforming how we think about schooling and learning. This is why they are implementing the 21st learning system that includes technology. Definitely, the Malaysian government would have already addressed and thought about the potential issues and problems related to cultural conditions before they even implemented educational computer games in classrooms. So, another scientifically proven example by the government themselves is the use of video games in the medical field. Video games are incorporated into the treatment of children, where it helps with autism and ADHD, example, the Antivir RX. So the government itself, if they are thinking that this video games is such a detrimental thing, why are they still implementing it in our education system? Leisure games like chess, although it's usually known as a physical board game, chess in the form of video games online allows player to train anywhere and anytime, like I said, and with different level of expertise around the world. So isn't this a far more advanced way of speed learning compared to the conventional way? Isn't this where video games wouldn't be detrimental to children because they allow more opportunities for children, except compared to the conventional way? So instead of pointing the blames on video games, the government should not just be harping on detrimental effects that is because of the level of use. They should come out with a way, they should be coming out with solutions to how they can make children they can make video games a more safer option for children to play. So in conclusion, this house believes that video games could be detrimental to children because one, it helps with socializing aspects, and two, it's already a proven educational tool adopted by even our government. So with this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen and honorable adjudicators, let's hear from the third speaker of the government team, Ms. Soraya Caroline Ringo.
Assalamualaikum and a good day to all those present here. Thank you for your input, fellow opposition speakers. However, as my ministers have already reinforced, we firmly believe that video games are detrimental to children. My job as a third minister is to discredit the opposition as well as summarize why the motion we brought today must be accepted by everyone in this house. First and foremost, however, the opposition's points are going to be very easily be disproven by us, and they actually already have been. First, the second speaker mentioned that the second speaker has only 2 points to say. However, you are hypocritical in the sense, as you have already stated 4 points. You said that moderation is key, which actually indicates that you think that it's users' fault for not being able to control themselves. Second, you said that they could talk with other people with different backgrounds. And then third, you said it's actually the government that is also using video games to help learn. And fourth, you said it also helps with the learning field, especially in the medical one. So you're actually hypocritical in that sense when you said you could only use 2 points. Now I'd like to rebut as well what you have said. The first speaker also mentioned that it's actually the user's fault for spending money in these gambling games. I'll get to that later. You said it's the user's fault for spending money. However, games nowadays, as I have mentioned in one of my POIs, are actually designed to be used for people to get to use more and also spend more money on them. As I've said, that these games are built to make sure that people spend more time and money. And this is dangerous for children as they have no concept for money. They have no concept of time. And yes.
So you said that children, you're making them so immature and making them, okay, you're saying children have the inability to distinguish, but isn't that where parents should come in as their responsibility? Because these children are supposedly under the supervision of their parents. Please justify your answer.
That helps my point. Not all parents are there to supervise their kids. And even if you make the point that games nowadays have age restrictions and everything like that, do you think it's really that hard to simply just say, I am over 18, or you can verify an email? Kids nowadays are pretty smart and trying to get what they want. And what they want is to spend more video game time. And when they want that, they can learn how to bypass these security measures, which aren't even security measures at all. These are very easily accessible to everyone. I feel like even a toddler could do this. Yes?
So isn't that again saying that it's the fault of the users for manipulating their parents or doing it so? Because video games, it's not detrimental to nature, but it's because of the users wanting to engage in it and be like lying to the age restrictions. That is what's making video games detrimental, not the nature itself.
You forget my point where I said that video games are designed to help manipulate kids into wanting to play their games even more and use money and manipulate them into thinking that they want this and that they should actually bypass the security measures now. Okay, finally, I will now summarize what our government has already said. My Prime Minister has said sleep deprivation can be caused by video games. According to Amita Sharaf, a double board certified doctor in general pediatric medicine and pediatric emergency medicine, she states that 3 to 6-year-olds need about 10 to 12 hours of sleep per day, and that 7 to 12-year-olds actually need about 10 to 11 hours of sleep per day. This means that about half the day should be reserved to kids to sleep. And especially when they have school and outdoor activities to do and homework, they don't have time to play these video games, and they sacrifice precious sleeping time to play these useless video games. Next, my Prime Minister also mentioned addiction. There have been many cases where kids have neglected their reality in favor of playing video games. This is a clear sign of gaming addiction. Addiction to video games can also cause a multitude of problems, as we have said earlier, such as self-neglect. However, an even worse side to this is the other addictions that video games can cause, which, as my Prime Minister has stated already, gambling addiction. The dopamine released to the brain when someone wins a game that they only had a small chance in winning is exponentially high, which could cause people, and especially small, vulnerable children, to depend on the high of winning something even as minute as a few pixels on screen. Games that use in-game currency thrive off of people relying either in-game events or, as more commonly that is actually used, is to spend their own pocket. Thank you. And kids don't know any better and just want a really brightly colored PNG file to add to their collection, which can cause them to spend even more time and even more money. Excessive playing of these video games have led to devastating effects on children, as they can't grasp the concept of money and end up spending way too much on a worthless thing. Next, my second minister has stated it has been proven that kids have played video games for a long time and have expressed attention span problems, because when they are constantly having dopamine released into their brain, when it suddenly stops, they simply just lose interest and focus. So let's say a kid is doing homework, they wouldn't be able to focus since their entire thinking is about to going straight to their video games and have fun instead of actually trying to learn and complete the task at hand.
POI, ma'am.
Yes.
Your first speaker had mentioned that it causes stress, while you mentioned that it releases dopamine. When dopamine relieves stress, that means you and your first speaker are very obviously contradicting. You say it is releasing dopamine to relieve stress, while your first speaker says it causes stress. Please justify.
It actually causes both. When a kid loses at a game, they actually can also be stressed. But when they play a game even more, they can actually get more dopamine and thus become more addicted. When my Prime Minister said it actually causes stress, is when they lose, and when they make a bad decision is when it causes stress. People should not learn that losing at something or failing at something should cause stress. In fact, it should actually help them learn. However, video games actually negate this and actually makes them more stressed instead and more frustrated. This leads to my second minister's next point, which is that they get harassed by people. Online games don't have filters, and even if they do, their censorship is easily overcome by using symbols to replace certain letters and words. For example, the letter A could simply be replaced by the @ symbol, and the I letter could also be replaced with a 1 or an exclamation point, etc. It's very common for people to start saying especially aggressive things if they start losing the game, as I have said earlier. And if children are there, no, thank you. And if children are there, it will influence them into saying these when they're also frustrated. Next, as my Prime Minister and my second minister have stated, it helps kids become more violent and they learn about sexual things. Kids playing video games can be more aggressive since they are more exposed to these types of games. As I've said earlier, they can also learn vulgar language if exposed to these types of video games. It's not just being physically aggressive, but they're also using their words to harm people and as well as themselves. Video games can teach children to treat women as sex objects and use for men to simply use. This becomes a problem, especially with kids, because as we have stated countless times over the course of this debate, children are easily influenced and vulnerable, which makes it easy for them to learn and treat people unlike the human beings that they are. Video games are a huge factor in forming a child's mind, and when they indoctrinate our kids to be cruel to one another, especially minorities, this is why we absolutely believe in this notion. Because no matter how many warnings or captures or how many emails you have to be verified, kids are growing smarter these days, and they know how to bypass these security measures to get what they want, which is just to play more video games. Because seriously, when was the last time a game has reprimanded a child for being under 18? It's super easy to lie about their age, and when has anyone failed the I'm not a robot test? Just confirm that you're 18 and boom, easy access to the vulgar video games, such as what we have stated earlier, which is GTA, Call of Duty, Valorant, etc. The fact that the opposition stands against this motion is unfathomable. We believe in this motion. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen and honorable educators, this is the third speaker of the opposition team, Mr. Yuga Varga, anak lelaki SC Sanggaran. Please welcome.
A very good morning to the honorable judges, well-composed moderator, very accurate timekeeper, my teammates, and not forgotten, the government team. The purpose on the floor today is for me to rebut all points put forward by the government side. Before putting forward my rebuttals, I would like to bring it to the attention of the House that the government has failed to put forward a case line where this proves that the motion for today's cannot stand. Before rebutting the points, I would like to state what the points that had been put forward by the speakers from the government side. The first speaker had talked about sleep deprivation, gender stereotyping, addiction, excessive use, health, and money. Now, rebutting the first point from the first speaker of the government side, sleep deprivation. Well, for your information, dear government side, you have indirectly agreed to us that it is how you use it that makes it detrimental. It is not the video games that are detrimental. It is very obvious here. And when asked, the Prime Minister of the government side had agreed that if video games is used moderately, it is not detrimental to children. Therefore, is there any question here, as the motion for today's debate does not talk about extremism, addiction, excessive usage, or any words that explains the nature of extremism. Therefore, it is very clear here that the government side had agreed with us about moderation as key to avoid detrimental effects from video games. Next, talking about gender stereotyping. Well, gender stereotyping is everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. It is everywhere. And I'm not arguing the fact that it is in video games, but there is a board called the Electronic Software Rating Board that determines what age group can be exposed to what kind of content. So for an example, if a 12-year-old child wants to log into a game that contains gender stereotyping, he or she will not be allowed into the game. Therefore, it is obvious here that gender stereotyping is a point that cannot stand in our debate today. Next, our Prime Minister talked about addiction. Well, addiction is not the fault of video games. Addiction is the fault of children. And when addiction comes into the picture, where are the parents? What are the role of the parents? And the third speaker has talked about the role of the parents when she said that not all parents have the time. Well, when you are a parent, it's your responsibility to have the time, whether you can or can't, it's still your responsibility to look after your child. The question is, are you interested or not? Therefore, if a parent is interested, he or she can indeed ensure that the child uses video games in a very beneficial way. And I would like to justify to the government side that the usage of words addiction, excessive use, extremism, prolonged hours, and these kind of words are totally irrelevant to today's debate. This is because the motion for today's debate is this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. It doesn't have the word addiction or extreme usage. Therefore, any points relating to excessive usage, addiction is totally irrelevant to today's debate. Government side has also talked about the health domain, where they generalize gaming as causing eye strain, headache, vomiting, and many other things. Well, dear government side, I would like to justify to you that the National Science Foundation and the European Research Council has proven to us that video games can actually be very beneficial to the medical industry instead of being detrimental to it. Well, I've justified the detrimental effect to you by saying that extremism in today's debate is not encouraged and it's totally irrelevant. Therefore, the usage of video games in medical industries include usage of video games to motivate children who are going to undergo recovery processes or are going to undergo surgery. For an example, In Malaysia, there is a video game called Remission, which is to help children specifically to combat cancer. When children are undergoing cancer treatment, they are asked to play this game as a source of motivation, where in this game, nanobots are used to shoot cancer cells and bacterial infection. Isn't this a very noble move, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't this a very noble move to help children, to benefit children today? Next, talking about pain in the hand and stuff like that. Well, the pain in the hand justified by the first speaker is actually called the carpal tunnel syndrome. The carpal tunnel syndrome is pain, numbness, and tingling in the hand. Well, how can you blame this just on video games alone? Well, dear government, carpal tunnel syndrome can be caused by opening a car door, lifting your school bag, using a...
POI?
Yes, please.
I never said anything about pain causing in the hand. Why are you suddenly making up a new point?
I'm not making up a new point. Well, I'm highlighting that you have generalized the debate today in health domain, and you said, and more. You said that it is detrimental to the health of the video gamers. Therefore, this is one point that is detrimental to the health of video gamers. Therefore, it is you who have generalized video game as being detrimental to people's health. Well, you have failed to understand the fact that it is the nature of the usage that could be detrimental to the children instead of video games itself.
Actually, the
Next.
only physical strain I talked about was eyes. Nothing else, just eyes.
Okay, moving on to my next point, which is isolation and decreased communicative skills. Well, the government have already agreed to us that people are actually exposed to many people online. Well, that is indirectly agreeing to us that video games can actually be a way to socialize. The second speaker had told that problem solving, rejected, has talked about problem solving skills and cognitive abilities and how it is not possible. Well, for the information of the government side, chess is a form of video games. Well, how do you say that chess reduces attention span? Dear second speaker, you talked about reduced attention span. I still do not understand. How do you say that chess reduces attention span?
POI.
Next. Sorry, rejected. I've already accepted two. I will be not accepting any more POIs. Next. The second speaker had already agreed to us that there are no statistics proving that it reduces attention span. When there are no statistics proving it reduces attention span, how is it possible that you are trying to convince us it reduces the attention span? Well, there are many games out there that could actually increase the attention spans of its users. Next, the government had emphasized of using money, money, and money, how it drains the people's money. Well, we are talking about children here, dear government. We are talking about children. When we are talking about children, the money source is from their parents. Therefore, if parents play their role in controlling how children spend their money, it is very easy to control the detrimental effect brought by the nature. And I would like to re-justify that the government here has agreed to us that video game is not detrimental to children. Instead, the level of use and how people use it is detrimental. Therefore, it is very clear here that video games are not detrimental in nature, but the level of use makes it so. Before I rest my case, I would like to re-justify our stand that we oppose the motion of today, which is this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. Thank you.
We have heard the arguments from both teams, and now the debaters are given 3 minutes to prepare their reply speech. Now, to wrap up our debate today, here is the reply speech from the opposition team, which will be delivered by Miss Amber Lee Jie Shun.
Members of the House, welcome for the last time from today's proponent. It is now my pleasure to summarize this debate, which is, let me restate our motion, which is this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. But as we as the opposition say, it could not be detrimental because it's not detrimental in nature, but the level of use which makes it so. Let me please emphasize again that, the government team has failed to provide their case line. And because of they have, please listen properly because I did not state 4 points. Those were merely my rebuttals. My first speaker points were improve cognitive skills. I stated that it helps with socializing aspects and it's a proven educational tool. So what the government is trying to say is that they're talking about detrimental effects. They're turning a blind eye to all the benefits that are already there. They themselves acknowledge the benefits, so that's why they're using it in our education system. But all the detrimental effects they're giving are because of the effects of the users, like addiction. It's not because of the nature of video games. It's because of the how your users use it. So video games directly makes it interactive, which supports my point, socializing aspects. It directly improves cognitive skills, like what my first speaker had said. And it's also a proven educational tool. But does it directly say, oh, please get addicted, please neglect sleep? No, that is what the users have did. So we are showing how crucial our case line is because it's been very clear how video games has become a need in children's lives. We are living in the 21st century and it is impossible to remove everything that has become a norm for us most millennials. The government themselves want us to be as tech savvy as in this technological era. So do we have to reject every opportunity of nurture and exposure for our children, which could help them in the future because of a mild disadvantage, because of fear? The fear, one thing is certain, is that video games could not be detrimental if brought to good use. Ladies and gentlemen, the members of the House, the government is so scared of the detrimental effects of video games that they are only raising awareness on it instead of proposing solutions to the problems. They themselves, again, have acknowledged the benefits and are implementing it and encouraging video games to our educational system. So ask yourself, my dear government, if something is this detrimental, like what you have mentioned, why would you even introduce it to the educational field in the first place since the 1980s to encourage a whole addictive country? No. And is it detrimental? Is it making us detrimental? No. But why are you guys tabling the motion today? It's because the government itself is not certain of detrimental effects on children. And that is why we as a proponent team, they uses the word could be. Video games could be detrimental to children. So they're not certain to tell us if video games is bad or they would have used will be detrimental. They are just merely clouding yours and our minds with biased judgments on video games' effects on children, hoping we can be swept away. However, we as the opposition already gave you the assurance, we already gave you the certainty, even the government is on our side, that video games is not detrimental in nurture, but the level of use which makes it so. So ladies and gentlemen, we have proven the House with evidence and researches, and this is exactly why today's motion should fall. We as the opposition team strongly believe that the proven benefits of video games outweigh the detrimental effects and ensure a brighter future for the upcoming generation. Whatever the government is trying to say, okay, let me bring in a final example since I have time. Water. If water is used detrimental, then if water is used excessively, then it's detrimental. But does that mean water in general is detrimental to human beings? That is how the government is generalizing today's whole motion. So again, we as the opposition team, members of the House, it's clear about the contradicting view of the government and how we have gained certain and experienced with benefits on video games. So I'll leave the rest for you to decide. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
And last but not the least, here is the reply speech from the government team, which will be given by Mr. Lai Zhengyi. Please welcome.
Hello and good morning. Before we end this debate, we all still strongly believe that video games are detrimental to children. So I will be continuing with my reply speech. I will be breaking down and summarizing all of your points first. You say that video games help improve cognitive skills, problem-solving skills, and creativity. I will combine them and say that video games improve child's development. For the last time, video games affect the brain. As we already said, video games affect a part of the brain and stunts growth. If it stunts our growth, it doesn't matter. The benefits doesn't even matter. Secondly, you say that video games can help socialize. It doesn't help socializing as it's not the video games helping, but the user itself. The users can socialize in a place that isn't in the video game. So video game isn't the main factor that helps. You also say that video games help the education. Yes, you can learn many things. However, you can also learn bad things. You are just thinking from the educational side. However, you are not thinking the majority. Most children never, or if not ever, played video games that are educational before. This is because these types of video games aren't really fun. So you are just thinking from the perspective of the educational system and not from the whole system as whole. Now, to summarize our points, we say that it causes health problems, sleep deprivation, and it kills attention span. This is because video games are naturally bad. You said government, many educational systems use it, but not fully. Do you know why? This is because video games may be useful, but it's not formal. When children hear the word video games, they won't be able to learn seriously. Also, we said that video games will cause children to learn negative things, such as sexual things and violent things. When learned young, it's even more detrimental. You said that there are many education games that teach children these things. However, if children learn these things since young, it will affect them long term. We also say that video games causes addiction. This is because, as my third speaker said, video games are naturally addictive. Even educational video games. This is because if companies earn more money, they will develop their games. When users get addicted to the games, it will cause addiction. You say that addiction is caused by the user themselves. But think about it. Do users get addicted to the game just because of them? And what is the factor that causes them to become addicted? They must be addicted to cause addiction, right? Yes, you said that just now. However, video games causes addiction as video games are naturally addictive. So now, before I end this debate, I will further reinforce the fact that video games are more detrimental as it brings more harm than good. This is because you have been overemphasizing the fact that it's the user's fault, when actually video games causes the user to be bad. Users and people aren't bad naturally, but they only become bad after the influence of video games. Thank you very much for this debate and have a nice day. Thank you.
Well, that's all for our debate today. We would like to thank the honorable adjudicators and debaters for your presence today. The results for the debate competition will be announced shortly. So please don't leave the room yet. So now the result is ready. The winning team goes to opposition, which is KMY.
Well done, well done.
Congratulations. Alright, the best debater of this session is Mr. Yuga Varga Anak Lelaki S. Sanggaran, which is the third speaker for KMY. Well done, everyone. So with that, thank you.
Well done. You guys did extremely well.
Thank you. Thank
Hey,
you.
congrats,
You
guys.
too.
It was
Thank
just
you so much. You
Congrats,
guys were
you guys
so
were
strong.
so good. Oh my god, my bladder is so small. Please. Oh my god.
it was just a win on the fence, man. It was just a win on the fence.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
You guys did really, really well.
Congrats.
Yeah.
You all deserve it. All the best to you in the next round.
Yeah.
All the best to
You
you guys
too.
the
You
next round
too.
too.